All right, we're gonna do story time with Uncle Punky. That's me. I'm Dillinger. I'm gonna host this little chit chat we're gonna have, and we're gonna talk about something topical for people like me, anyways, nerds as it would be. Stan Lee. He most recently died, and it left a very big void upon a lot of people. There's a lot of people he did affect, and he affected my life, as it would be, because I'm a very, very big on comic books, Marvel, history of Marvel, anything Marvel Comics related. I give DC their props when necessary. However, I grew up as a Marvel guy. That's just what it is. And Stan Lee was a big part of my upbringing, and a lot of others. There's been things and tweets and news about people kind of dogging it, as it would be. The fact that, all the outpouring for Stan Lee now that he's dead from other fans and celebrities, it's like they don't quite understand what the grab of comic books is, which is fine. A lot of people don't. For others, it was an escape. It was a creative outlet. It helped me in my creativity through my life, drawing comic books and whatnot. This is my background. A little intro into me, as it would be. But Stan Lee, born in 1922 in New York, winner of several awards. Jack Kirby Hall of Fame, Will Eisner Awards, Inkpot Awards, Saturn Awards, National Medal of Arts. President gave him that one. Hugo Award. He's been involved in a lot of aspects of pop culture over the past 50 years, I'd say. Was it 1939? He started at Timely Comics, which later became Marvel Comics in the long run. He made his debut. He was just a text filler in the pages of Captain America. That's what he did. He'd fill up inkwells. Because back then, for the kids who are listening who don't know, inkwells, they'd dip a pen in ink, and then they would draw or text or make the pen functionable and somehow. Not like today's clicky pens. An inkwell. So he had to go around and fill ink bottles. That was his job. You start from the bottom, and you work your way up, which he truly did. He challenged the Comics Code Authority. Inadvertently got that adapted and changed to what it is now. They're more open about discussions of drugs and other topical issues of today that affect kids and a lot of kids who read comics. Preteens, they used to reach out to a lot of preteens, so you could see how, kids were directly affected by comic books. And he helped change all that and make comics what they are today, more open, more topical, more relatable to lots of people. And that was a wonderful thing about Marvel Comics in general, as opposed to other comic book companies like DC. They mainly had characters based on gods, people of higher authority, like Zeus and Mercury, and all these Amazonian princesses and these wondrous people from far out amongst the stars who they didn't have any problems in their life, except maybe from outsiders that changed their aspect on how they looked at humanity. Marvel gave you more of a humanitarian feel. Your characters were normal people, everyday Joes. Captain America, he just wanted to serve his country and fight, but he was too scrawny. So he signed up for a program. They gave him the abilities that he needed, and he became a national figure all of a sudden. One of Stan's first co-creations was a character called the Destroyer in Mystic Comics. He was big on fighting oppression overseas because it was big wartime comics. That was mainly what your heroes did back then. Captain America was known for punching Hitler in the face over and over again. And then, of course, with the Japanese and the Russians, stories changed with time. Obviously, you had to fight whatever oppressor was coming to take away your freedoms. And there's always somebody. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, they left due to a dispute from Timely Comics. And Stan Lee was left as the editor-in-chief, 19 years old, editor-in-chief and art director. And he kept that position until 1972, when he finally became publisher, after Goodman finally moved on. Back in 1942, he went to the Army. He was only fixing telephone poles and other minor communications things, and then he decided to transfer to the trading film division. And then he went back into comics after his service in World War II. This was been 1945 when the war ended. The 50s took him through the Atlas Comics years. That was also before Marvel Comics. They finally settled on it. They turned out a lot of romance, horror, western, humor, science fiction, medieval fantasy stuff. And some of the first superheroes that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby finally created, this was later down the line after they pumped out endless amounts of horror and western and romance. There was one like weekly. There's some kind of story about it. Some kind of two-gun kid or teenagers in love, and that's pretty much all the 50s knew, I think, at that time, was aliens and love and sock hops and malts. I wasn't around in the 50s, I don't understand it. First superheroes that Lee and Kirby did create was Fantastic Four. This would have been around 60s, mid-60s. Highly popular. It was based on the Challengers of the Unknown, which was a DC comic property at the time. And they were big on going on these far-off adventures into space. And, of course, they wanted to combat that as a rival company, as it would be back in the day. And that gave us Fantastic Four, which kind of changed the game. It was just a normal family of people. Like I said, they had these human qualities. Either circumstance or fate changed them into what they were, and they obtained these these superpowers that caused them to go out and just live these fantastic lives. But they were deep down written well as normal human people, and of course they're popularly led off to Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, the X-Men. Stan Lee teamed up with Steve Ditko, gave us Doctor Strange through the 70s. They had some weird adventures, just colorful, beautiful stuff that changed a lot of the comics too. And just the way they were read and the art direction and just gorgeous pieces of artwork. If you ever get a chance to read some old 70s Doctor Strange, that's where it's at. It's just surreal stuff. And of course, we got Spider-Man. Finally got us some Spider-Man. That was the one thing that I latched onto as a kid that stayed with me to this day. The movies got weird with the Tobey Maguire. Andrew Garfield was all right. I'm in love with Tom Holland. I'll say it. I'm the first one to admit it. The kid is great. It was one of those characters that, as a young person, you could relate to. Relatable characters, human stories. He was raised by his aunt and uncle. Unfortunate incident. His uncle gets killed. He's bestowed with these fantastic powers. He's at a crossroads in his life, and he also has to deal with high school and girls and getting home on time for dinner and doing homework. And it's amazing that you can write a character like that who also has just these incredible powers and strives to do good and fight this evil while also fighting just everyday demons and problems. So, he gave us wonderful characters. Wonderful characters. They got a rich history, they're diverse, and they're humans who are gifted with something that they don't know what to do with, and they got to figure it out. And it's fun to follow along and read and see how those characters develop as you develop in your life. It's amazing the kind of things that actually go hand in hand as you read them that connect with your life. In the 70s, there's a lot of promotions. Marvel started doing, through the 60s, a lot of TV, scripted, art-directed stuff. Stan was doing the editing the letters page of the comics, as well as writing his monthly column, Stan's Soapbox, which was highly topical. A lot of people nowadays are tweeting and talking about it, the fact that he made some statements about segregation and race, and he had some hot topic things that he was very opinionated about, but it made sense, and it was very, very well read and very well worded. I mean, he was a writer. He was just exceptional at doing about that. And of course, he'd sign off with his trademark, Excelsior, which is just a great. Excelsior is just it's a great expression when you're feeling good. Excelsior. He left his duties in the 90s for Marvel. He still continued to receive an annual salary of $1 million as a chairman emeritus of Marvel Comics. So he's always still a big part of it. But after that, I mean, he had POW Entertainment, Stanley Media. I mean, he was everywhere, and he still continues to be everywhere, actually. Contributing to Marvel, DC, musical, movies, kids, Comic-Cons, his cameos galore. He even cameoed in some DC stuff. I mean, he was always a contributor to comic books in general. With DC, he gave info, he'd show up in cameos. I mean, everybody worked together. It's a comic books is a large umbrella of business. I mean, there's no real top dog. It's all fan-based, really, on who top dog is. People are either very heavy on Marvel or they're very heavy on DC. It's one way or the other. There's no middle ground. Unfortunately, I'm heavy on Marvel. I do appreciate DC. I got problems with the movie universe. We'll talk about that some other time. We'll get a guest. We'll argue. It'll be fun. Not for them, but it'll be fun for me. Because that's just the kind of person I am. But to be able to separate yourself from that life, but still be a huge part of that life and pop culture, as he has been for so many years. I mean, that's an outstanding feat. A lot of people did look up to him. A lot of people appreciated his writing, what he did for comics, what he did for artists. A lot of names got their start coming into Marvel. I mean, a lot of those characters, they wouldn't be here today without him. We wouldn't have heroes. We wouldn't have superheroes. We wouldn't have the cosplay or Comic-Cons. I mean, a lot of us wouldn't have that lifestyle and that desire to watch the films and read the comics, and they're excited for their bi-weekly book or that graphic novel, or hey, I heard there's a TV series coming out on Sci-Fi or something with, oh my God, I gotta watch it. There's a lot of movies I wouldn't have watched that starred Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Hiddleston, a lot of the names that are in Marvel. There's people I never even heard of. Wouldn't even watch their movies. I've gone back, I've watched the movies. A lot of them are bad. I'm okay with it. They introduced me to lots of things, and they help me view the world differently. Like I said, comics are escape. They've always been an escape. It's like movies are an escape. They're just a way to take your mind and put it somewhere else, put you somewhere else, let you be somebody else for a little while. It's a book. Books are full of facts, fun, information, science fiction. I mean, they're worlds apart, and there's something that everybody needs to take part in. It was one of the first things you have to do as a human is learn to read. I learned to read, and then I just chose to stick with comic books. They're interesting, they're exciting. You can find one on science, history, music bands. You can find them on cartoon characters. I mean, everything in pop culture, everything's got a comic book now. Movies are being adapted from comic books, graphic novels, indie labels, stuff like that. And a lot of that spawns from men like Stan Lee. So it's a huge loss. And it's sad for the world, sad for me, and yeah, we'll never everybody like them. So thanks for the time. We're gonna do this again soon. We're gonna talk about all kinds of weird shit. It's gonna be great.